Hello and welcome to this pattern hacking tutorial, the first of a series that I plan to do at least once a month. So taking patterns that I've created and hacking them up to make new cool things. Because I think if you're going to spend money on a pattern, you might as well try and get as much use as possible from it, and it doesn't need to be in its original form. So hopefully you're going to learn something new and be inspired, hopefully. I've been wanting to do this for so long, so I'm really excited about this. So let's dive right in and talk about what we're going to do for this tutorial. Oh, you know the comfiest, snazziest jumpsuit you'll ever make? It's the Beryl jumpsuit, and we're going to turn it into a top and trouser combo. And I think this is a beginner friendly tutorial. It's quite simple, the pattern's quite easy to alter, so I'm hoping it's going to be nice and easy. For this tutorial, you are going to need some paper, unless you do want to cut into your original Beryl jumpsuit pattern, but then it just makes it very difficult to put it back and make more jumpsuits. So I recommend getting some paper. Whether you can get some like craft paper rolls. I've seen them in The Works, Hobbycraft, WH Smith's. But if not, you could literally just get some newspaper and stick it together with masking tape. And then you are going to need some elastic, so to make the waistband for the trousers. So I use 38mm wide, and obviously you need enough to measure your waist. So yeah, let's crack on and make a really cool set. Let's go. Oh, and before you go, if you don't want to miss any more tutorials, and I do business vlogs and I do all sorts of things, then please subscribe. It really does help and it will keep you updated with what I do. Thanks. Okay, let's go for real now. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is to trace around this entire front pattern piece in your size onto another bit of paper like this. Make sure to add all of the matching notches that you see on your original pattern piece. Then you're going to want to add a waistline. So it's usually about 2 inches or so above the pocket notch which you find on the pattern. But if not, you can put this up against your body and then mark it that way. And then you just need to square it off across the entire front. Okay, once you've drawn in that line, you are going to cut along this. Once you've done that, we're going to put the bottom part to the side and we're going to work on the top first. We are going to add a long ruffle along the bottom of this top, and you are going to need to add a 1 centimeter seam allowance to this part, which is going to connect the ruffle to the top. And it's up to you. You can either put some paper underneath and measure that out, but in order just to save time, I'm literally just going to make a note of adding a 1 centimeter seam allowance here. Fabulous. Then to do the ruffle, I'm going to put this against my body and measure how long I want it to be. So in order to get the length of the ruffle, I'm going to measure this first. That's about 32 centimeters. And then I do want it quite ruffly. So if I times this by 4, which comes to 128 centimeters, that would just account the 2 front and the 2 backs. So I'm actually going to times that by 1.5 to make sure that it's a really long gathered piece, and that's going to create a proper ruffle along the hem of this top. So if I do that, it comes to 192 centimeters, but I'm just going to round that up to 200 centimeters. And again, I don't really want to waste any paper, so I'm just going to draw the pattern on the top, 14.5 centimeters wide. And then, as mentioned before, it's going to be 200 centimeters long. So that's the top sorted. Obviously, you can change these measurements. If you want a much longer ruffle, then just add that to the width. And if you want it more ruffly, less ruffly, then you can increase or decrease this length size. But let's go ahead and grab the trouser part, because that's a little bit more complicated. Now, because we're doing an elastic waist rather than a facing for the trousers, you're going to want to trim off this little bit that is coming out here. So we're just going to do that. Okay, then for the measurement of the waist, you're going to measure your front and the back waist. So I measured 30 centimeters for the front waist and 32 centimeters for the back waist. But obviously you have two fronts and you have two backs. So we need to add the two 30 centimeter fronts and the two 32 centimeter backs. So my waist for these trousers is 124 centimeters. And then just a quick bit of maths, you need to measure your own waist and then try and have at least 25 to 30 centimeters of ease for the gathering and the elastic. If you find that once you've done your measurements and you actually need maybe another 8 centimeters or so, then I recommend that you draw a line right through the middle of this, cut up it, and then just spread it by the amount that you want to add. And then you can either just tape it and work with this, or you can trace around it and have a new pattern piece. So for the elastic, you need to determine what width you're going to have it. So this one is 38 millimeters. I quite like a chunky elastic waistband. I just think it's more comfortable, but it's totally up to you what you want and what elastic you have to hand. You're going to put some scrap bit of paper underneath your pattern piece and tape it down. Then from that waistline, you're going to add the width of your elastic plus like a 2 millimeter ease. My elastic is 38 millimeters wide, but I am actually going to do a 40 millimeter waistband here. And then obviously we're going to add a 1 centimeter seam at the top of this. That way when it gets pressed under and pressed under again, it just means that the elastic is going to be fully encased in your trouser. So we're going to add 1 centimeter to this, like so. And then you're just going to join up the lines here. If you find that there is a slight curve, then I recommend that you just, from that pocket line, just square it up. Like so. I would also recommend that you put some little notches where your waistline is. It just means that when you go to press it and sew later on, it just makes it easier. It gives you like a little guide. Right, let's go ahead and cut along these lines. Fabulous. Let's go grab your back piece, and then you're going to need to trace that pattern piece as well. So like what you did before, trace around this pattern piece, making sure to add all of the notches. For the top, you're going to repeat the same steps. So measure 2 inches or whatever you want your waist to be like, and then cut along that. And then again, I'm going to do a 1 centimeter seam allowance note rather than drawing it on and all of that kerfuffle. Just a quick tip, if you do decide that you wanted to lengthen your top rather than adding a ruffle, then whatever changes you make to this, you make to this. And if you want to check that the seams are going to line up, you just put them on top of each other and then kind of finger press them together like that, as if you were going to sew a little seam allowance. Okay, like what you did before, you're going to add the 4 centimeter line and then the 1 centimeter seam allowance. That's going to be pressed under. And then I'm just going to square off some of these points here. Just makes it easier for sewing. Fabulous! Then the final piece of the pattern puzzle, you grab your front facing, which looks like this. It's pattern piece number 3. And rather than trace around this and waste more paper, I suggest that you just put it up towards, like line it up towards the edge of your front pattern piece. And then where there is a little, your little mark for your waistline, I would literally just fold up like this. I will make a note on here, because if this goes well, I do plan to make many more. So where you've just done your little fold line, just draw a little line and put top facing. That way, when you go to cut this pattern piece out, you know that when you can just like line it up against the edge of the fabric and just cut as Okay, so here are all of your pattern pieces. We've got a front, which you will need to cut 2 out of main fabric. Your facing, you will need to cut 1 pair out of like a sturdy kind of material. You will need to either cut 2 of your back piece in main fabric, or alternatively, if you do not want a seam line on the back, you just remove 1 centimetre from this side and then place on a fold. That way you're taking away the 1 centimetre seam allowance and it will still fit along the neckline of the facing. So I will probably do that. So obviously you need your back neck facing, and you cut that out of the same material as this facing, and this has obviously been cut on fold, so if you want to, you can just get rid of this 1 centimetre seam allowance that you can see is too much here, and then cut this pattern piece on fold. And obviously you will need that ruffle piece, which is going to measure 200 centimetres long and 14.5 centimetres wide, but also if you change the measurements, it's going to be different. I should have mentioned this before, but you need to label these front and back. If you're not too sure which one's which, if you have a look at the little curve, crotch curve, that one is a bit more aggressive. So it's the aggressive probably isn't the right word, but do you know what I mean? It's more exaggerated. So that is your back piece and that is your front piece. And then, like the Beryl jumpsuit, you're going to need your sleeve and your pocket bag. Right, let's start making this garment. It's quite similar in the way that the Beryl jumpsuit is made. However, you are not doing the full facing like you do on the full length Beryl jumpsuit. So to start off, get your 2 front pieces and your back piece. And then with right sides together, you are going to pin the shoulders and stitch them. And you're also going to have to sew the shoulder seams of the facing as well. You are going to open this piece flat and attach the facing right sides together. I usually start at the seams, it usually helps. Okay, and now we're just going to trim off these little corners as close as you can to the stitching, but don't cut into the stitching for obvious reasons. And then along the curved edges, we're gonna cut into it again as close as you can to the stitching. It just makes it a lot more neater when you go to press it and stay stitch it. Okay, so I've gone ahead and pressed it, stay stitched it, which sort of keeps it all nice and neat and stops the main fabric from rolling over, which is good. And I've also overlocked the edge. I think that's everything. Oh, and I've also done stitch in the ditch at the side shoulder seams as well. I'm not going to show you that because all of this is in the Beryl tutorial, which is a lot more detailed, and it's also got some steps on how to add pockets and things like that. So I'm kind of just showing you the differences with this pattern. But this is all very similar to the Beryl jumpsuit, so if you want to see that tutorial, then I will link it in the description. Like the Beryl jumpsuit, I am going to stitch the side seams of the top, and I'm also going to stitch the sleeves as well. This is how it is looking. We're nearly there. So we're going to now overlap this piece onto this piece like you would on the Beryl jumpsuit. So I'm going to overlap it by about 3 centimeters, I think, 2.5. Let's have a look. Yeah, about 3 centimeters I'm going to do. Then you're just going to stitch this down. You can just do it with a loose stitch or just around a normal stitch, and then I'm just going to put a pin in here as well just to keep it stable, and then we're going to work on the ruffle piece. So I've got my big ruffle piece. It is 14.5 centimeters wide by 200 centimeters long, and I've already stitched the sides closed to create one big long tube. And then what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to do a long loose stitch all the way around the top of this ruffle piece. And it's totally up to you, but I wanted to add another little bit of texture, so I'm going to add this little netted, I think it's netting mesh. I'm going to add this just at the side of the top, so I'm also going to do a gathering stitch on this piece as well. Wow, the sun's really starting to come through there. So I've gathered both the ruffle pieces, and then with right sides together we're going to attach this bottom bit to this hem here. Voila! She is done. So I was going to do some buttons, but it doesn't really make sense because it's quite an oversized top that will just go over your head. So yeah, I'm not adding buttons. So I've added the little ruffle, and I've also hemmed it, and I've hemmed it by just 2 centimeters rather than 3, just because it looks a bit short. And then I added the little lace ruffle here, which I think looks really cute. So yeah, really chuffed with that. So let's work on the trousers. As mentioned before, the tutorial on how to add the pockets for the Beryl jumpsuit is in the Beryl jumpsuit tutorial on YouTube, which I will link in the description. So you're gonna, with the notches that you've made, you're going to add your 4 pocket bags, and you're also going to add a little stay stitch line here as well. And once you've done that, you are going to place the front and backs together, and again, like the Beryl jumpsuit, you are going to stitch around this all the way down to the hem of the trousers. And you want to do that for both sides before moving on to the next step. Right, so I've stitched around the pocket bags and down the side seams. Then I went ahead and stitched the inside legs, as you can see here, and then I stitched both these pieces together, again like the Beryl jumpsuit. Yeah, I added these little cargo pockets, and it's from a business called Sew Me Something, and it's the cargo aerial trousers. These are honestly like my favorite trousers to make. I've made 2 pairs and I plan to make a lot more. I love them. I really love the sort of cargo look. So I've gone ahead and done that. So if you want to do that, then I'm sure there are some free cargo pockets or some tutorials on how to make your own cargo-like pockets like these. Then we are going to do the waistband of these. Right, so either by using the notches that you've made, or using like a seam allowance guide or tape measure, whatever you fancy, we're gonna press the fabric wrong side facing by 1 centimeter first. So let's go ahead and do that. You want to do this along the entire top of the waistband. Then you are going to turn the piece again by 4 centimeters, or by however centimeters your elastic was, with a little bit of ease. So 4 centimeters we're going to do. So that's all been pressed. So this is the back of the trousers and this is the front. And then what we're going to do is we're going to stitch as close as we can to this folded edge, leaving about a gap this big towards the back, just because when we go and stitch over it, it won't be seen as much at the back. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Grab your elastic. I've cut it to literally the length of my waist, which is 90 centimeters, because we're going to adjust it once it's in the casing. So grab a little safety pin, put it towards the end of the elastic, and then feed it through this little channel that you've just created. Okay, I've tried these on and I have trimmed the elastic. So I'm just going to overlap it by about 1/2 inch and then just stitch it loads to keep it secure, and then tuck it back in and then finish off that little gap that you left. Then the last thing you need to do is to hem the trousers. Whilst I was trying it on for the elastic, I noticed that I wanted them a couple inches shorter, so I'm just going to cut these off, hem them, and then we're done. Sorry, one last thing. So once you've closed your little elastic channel and it's all looking good, it's recommended to do a couple of top stitching in the elastic. It just makes it a bit more hard wearing and it gives a more professional look, I find. So to do that, you just put it under the machine and then pull as you go along, keeping the fabric and the elastic sort of quite tight and flat, and then you just do your stitching as normal and it looks a little like that. Yes. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I really hope you enjoyed making this. If you do have any pictures of what you make, please do share them with me. I love seeing them. Thank you so much. Please, again, like, comment and subscribe. It really does help, and I will see you next time. Bye.